Hello, welcome. Today's lesson is about completing the square. Sometimes there are quadratic expressions that cannot be factored. At times, they don't even model a square. What you can do is to apply completing the square to turn it into a perfect square trinomial. So we have here the form x squared plus bx. In order to turn it into a perfect square trinomial, you want to go ahead and add a third term right here, which will be in the form of b divided by 2 quantity squared. Now you might be wondering, where does the b value come from? What does that mean? Exactly, that is your coefficient for your x term. By doing so, you create a perfect square trinomial. X squared plus bx plus your third term now will be b divided by 2 quantity squared. Alright, in doing so, you formed a perfect square trinomial, which will now have factors of x plus b over 2 quantity multiplied by x plus b over 2. Now let's do some examples. Alright, so we're given the example x squared minus 2x, and we're instructed to complete the square and write the resulting expression as a binomial squared. Alright, let's remember that in order to do that, we need to use b divided by 2 quantity squared. Alright, let's look for your b value. Yes, that is in fact your -2. Alright, so in here you want to go ahead and plug that in. You have -2 divided by 2, and make sure you square. Alright, so we do have a -1, which you need to remember to square, and so you end up with a +1. Now we've accomplished the first step. We have produced your perfect square trinomial. Now we need to add your 1 here so that we can complete the square. Alright, so our next step now is to produce a binomial squared. In order to do that, let's remember that you want it to be in the form of x plus b over 2. Alright, let's redo that. Alright, so you have x plus b over 2 quantity squared. Now, of course, it's a binomial. It doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be an addition operation in between here. It might be subtraction. So let's take a look at your example right here. You have an x squared minus 2x plus 1. Alright, so let's set up your binomial first. You have an x, alright, your b over 2, which is basically the value right here before we square it. Therefore, that will be -1. So your factors for the trinomial x squared minus 2x plus 1 is quantity x minus 1 squared. Alright, let's work on another example. You have x squared plus 5x. Go ahead and try it out. Go ahead and pause the video while you do your work, and then continue playing it once you're done so you can check your answers. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and find out what our missing value over here is. In order to do that, remember to use the form b over 2 quantity squared. Alright, we're going to try and turn this into a perfect square trinomial and find its factors. Alright, so we do have a 5 over 2 quantity squared, which you will end up having 25 over 4. Perfect. And that's exactly what you would want to put up in here. There we go. Now you've produced a perfect square trinomial. The next step is to make sure you try and factor it out. All right, so remember now we have the form x plus b over 2 quantity squared as our factored form. Now, it may or may not be a positive or a negative in here due to the expression. So let's take a look at what this trinomial will produce. All right, so we do have the form x, and remember to put the square outside. All right, so we're going to find our b over 2 value. Going back to our problem or our solution on top, your b over 2 is right here. All right, we're going to look for that value, and that is exactly simply 5 over 2. So the question remains, is it a plus or a minus operation in between? Whatever the b over 2 sign takes is what you will put in the middle. So yes, in fact, it is a plus 5 over 2.